He rang up this morning about 7 o'clock, and he has the real frail voice. He just went, "What's happening?" That's what he said, is "What's happening?" And he just didn't know basically what was happening.
The arrogance of time, floating away with you. The arrogance of time threatens my mind, threatens my mind. Don't slip
The Arrogance of Time, the song, I kind of write songs, it's like a way of getting out of your system. It's been around a while before Dad, but it was very much, it's not literally about your grandma and grandpa, but it's like, that's the kind of, I suppose, the idea that, someone is losing someone to dementia, and they're kind of, just trying to deal with it. Your grandpa was in his late 80s, 90s, it was, he'd never cooked a meal for himself. He ended up being a full-time carer. His marriage vows, like "till death us do part," and sickness and health. It's kind of, I guess that was the most amazing thing, really, just how long he fought to be able to look after her when most people would have given up. But I guess that's what you do, isn't it? So I like the phrase "the arrogance of time." I don't know, there's something about it, because time is taking that person away, and it's like the arrogance of time, that it's kind of, I'm going to have this person and take them away from you. And there's also that line about, "you seem so frightened," but I just think that's the sad thing about dementia. Before they go totally in their own bubble, if you like, that there's a while where they know that their brain's crazy, and it must be quite scary, and you can see that they're kind of scared because they don't know what's happening to them, I suppose. But I think there's a period, I think Dad's in it now, where it's actually they're just frightened, because if you have a trauma, like an accident and you hurt your arm or a leg or something, obviously that's horrendous and painful, but you understand what it is. I've hurt my arm, therefore my arm hurts, and it's in a sling or whatever. But when it's in your brain, it's difficult to understand, and I think Dad knows that it's only going to get worse, and he knows that he's barely coping. But it's that the line, "don't slip away from me," because effectively that, with someone with dementia, that's what they're doing. They're just slipping away. It's like you're holding on to them, and they're just gradually slipping away, and there's nothing you can do to stop them. And minute by minute, hour by hour, that person that is slowly slipping away. I didn't anticipate having two people in our immediate family having dementia, so could do with it not being real, but that's kind of what the song does. The emotion comes from that situation where someone is slipping away, but it's a tough thing.
The arrogance of time, floating away with you. The arrogance of time threatens my mind, threatens my mind. Don't slip away.
Your grandfather, my dad, has been diagnosed with dementia, and he's always been very independent and looked after himself, and with him it's going very, very quickly, because it was just over a year ago that he stopped driving, and he was still driving into town and going dancing, and now a year later he can't work out how to open his front door. The first time we noticed he was struggling, he had an operation on his eyes, and they sent him home with a lot of eye drops, and it's just when he realised he really couldn't cope with it. really the first time I realised that wasn't right. It was quite upsetting, really. And then he had a stroke, and we found him. Unfortunately, we found him in time, but that was before Christmas, and then he went into hospital. Ever since he's come out of hospital, it's just been a gradual decline. We had to knock the door down when he had his stroke, and we had to get a new front door, and the new front door is really simple to open, just a bolt on the inside, and he can't work it out. I've written down a piece of paper, and he has to read the piece of paper to turn the bolt. And, this is a man who used to be a run a school, etc. But it's a weird thing. But it's worse than death, really, I think, because if someone dies, you kind of have that horrendous shock. But with dementia, you're just watching them die slowly in front of you. It's a kind of a torture for those who are left. Eventually, the person will disappear, and you're left with another person in the same body. But it's very tough for the people who have to look after them, because you're still emotionally attached to that body, so you feel you have to look after this person who doesn't really exist anymore. And I went round on Friday night. That was the first time I kind of thought for a while, he might not know who I am, because he was sitting there saying, like, the play's going to start now, what's going to happen, or something like that. I can't really remember, but it was a bit weird, and it's the first time I kind of felt that he was definitely progressing fast, if you like. It must be quite frightening, really, because he knows he's got dementia, but at the same time, because of dementia, you haven't quite got your brain's not the same. But he was also telling me that he hears music in his head, but it doesn't stop him getting to sleep, but I don't think he finds it enjoyable. He also used to listen to music and read, and that's another terrible thing with dementia, that it just lose your ability to do that. He doesn't read, doesn't listen to music. He just said that he finds it confusing. He can't put it all together in his head, but it's a weird thing. I don't know what else to say about it. You filming?
Yeah.
Started talking about don't do things without my knowledge, and I think he's just because we're talking about getting him into a home or care, so I think it's just all a bit confusion around there. But he did actually say last night there'll come a time when I won't know where I am. But the only nice thing about last night, because Lana rang up, and then Papa told the story about Lana and her imaginary cat, and he really smiled when he told it, so that was probably the best thing that's happened. And he's so weak as well, he's just so weak, so just skin and bone. But it's just terrible. Anyway, so poor man, and basically rang up. I can only find one care home with vacancies. I've got an appointment to visit them this afternoon. If they can have him tomorrow.
He's deteriorating way faster than Grandma did with her.
Yeah.
He's just, every day it's another
Worse.
stage. So it's accelerating fast for him.
I'm trying not to sound upset about it, so I'm kind of putting on a humorous stroke blunt face about it, but only because he was either laugh or cry. But I have to say it's probably one of the worst experiences of my life.
You've had a few.
I've had a few. Okay, after the weekend not from hell, but difficult weekend, we went to see a home on Friday, and they came. I rang them up. I had to rearrange work things because it just had to take priority, because I didn't really want him at home anymore on his own. And they came round, and he talked about his famous rugby story where he punched somebody and kept them quite entertained. They said he could sort of come and look, do what he wanted to. Really, there's no pressure, but I kind of assumed that he would want to go tomorrow and have a look, so left it like that. And then he said, "Give me 10 minutes, I need to think," which I did. And then after 10 minutes, he just said, "Go and get my shoes," which is his way of saying, "I'm ready to go to the home." So he just stayed. So they said, "Okay." So I left him there and went back and got his clothes. So in that sense, it was a lot easier than I was anticipating, and in some ways he's quite okay. After Thursday, when he was accusing your mum of locking you in your room. He has been quite okay, although he was quite depressed on Friday, but sort of making sense. But he's been okay. Anyway, I think once you get to that certain stage, it's the only place where he can be. So it's a bit of a relief, and if he settles down there, I should be relieved. Happy's not the word, but relieved probably is the word. He was talking on Friday when he was quite upset, really. And I remember he said, "I don't know who I am." And another time when I asked him something, I said, "What do you want?" And he said, "I don't know what I want." Basically couldn't have stayed like that. So I think in a sense he felt a bit of relief having made a decision. I guess, sensible to just make his mind up and go rather than to ponder on it and sleep on it. Because if you think about leaving your home for the last time ever, it's quite sad, really. Kind of typical dad that he makes a pragmatic decision and gets on with it. But there you go. Dad he was in a care home, and he wasn't eating and just seemed to be getting worse and worse. And I think it was partly the dementia, but he ended up having a seizure and having to go back into hospital. And he was in hospital for about a month, but they managed to get him to eating and drinking again, and he's picked up quite a bit now, so he's doing okay. Although he seems to be almost bedbound now, so he doesn't seem to want to get out of bed. But he's just come out now and had to move into a nursing home, which can provide him a better level of care. So he's that's probably it now, a nursing home until the end, but it depends how long that could be. But he seems more settled. I don't know if he's moved into the dementia now, so he's no longer sort of scared about getting it, but kind of almost that's his new norm. He does talk about having ghosts and things like that, but he kind of can rationalise the fact that it's to do with he knows that I don't see them and that they don't seem to scare him, but he has that. So he still at the moment can make perfect sense when you chat to him, but at the same time he's also obviously things that don't make sense, well, part of the beginnings of dementia, but he seems to be a lot more settled and steady now. So I think I've got to just let him carry on. Obviously I know from your grandma, my mother-in-law, how dementia eventually goes, so he obviously will get worse gradually anyway, and will eventually it will get difficult, but at the moment he seems relatively steady and relatively settled, although he doesn't really do very much now, just kind of lies in bed, occasionally gets up and stares into space, but doesn't unfortunately do a great deal, which is tragic when you think about how active and brilliant a mind he had, and this is someone who was a teacher and could speak loads of languages, and now can hardly think or do anything. But his long-term memory is still there, and we still have odd moments where on his birthday, his 89th birthday the other week, he entertained me and your sister by singing "I'm Just a Girl Who Can't Say No" from Oklahoma. But then he had a stroke that evening and I had to go back in, and then he was talking about seeing ghosts, so it kind of goes round in circles. But from my point of view, it's a big relief now that he's in a nursing home, so I don't have to worry about him, because when he was at home it was a big worry, because I knew we couldn't really cope with what he needed. And now it's more practical day-to-day stuff to sort out. And that's still not great, because I know from speaking to Dad that he would rather save his money and give it to you and his family than to spend it keeping him in a situation that he didn't want to be in. But unfortunately there's nothing you can do about that, because that's where we are. So that's disappointing, really, if I'm honest, because I know that if he had a choice he wouldn't be in the situation he's in now, but we don't, and sometimes life is just shit. But at the end of the day he's had a really good life, and it's just not the way to end it. That's it, I can't say more now.
Don't have that on film. You say that to you.